Mr. Mayor.
I'll pull this one out.
Good evening. Time is 6:04. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join us in the pledge for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, any changes to the agenda? Any items that you need to pull from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull out number 9 and number 10 for discussion.
Number 9 and number 10. Okay, so noted. Okay, under superintendent's report, discussion of the, or presentation on the full day pre-K update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, board members. First of all, I want to thank our board members for their trust. This is my first board meeting, so I want to thank them for really allowing me and giving me the opportunity to lead the district. And I want to thank everyone who really welcomed me with open arms. I already get to meet some great people, and so I'm very, very excited about working with each one of you. I also want to thank my family in the back, right? They came here to meet me for the first time.
Welcome to Donna.
Introduce them one by one.
So we have Adam, and then Zach, and those are my 2 boys. Sandra, my wife, and they're all in the back. But yes, so for full day pre-K, we have great news to share with you today. We want to again thank our board members for really giving us the opportunity to look into offering full day pre-K, and with the help of our team here, we're able to actually come up with a full day pre-K for the 2017-2018 school year. So Donna DISD will be offering full day pre-K for the 2017-2018 school year. 2018-2019 school year. And I want to also share with you that it's not, we're not adding any cost. It's not costing the district anything. We are able to use some grant money, and we do have excess teachers that you're all aware of. So we'll be allocating those funds and also saving a lot of money on our buses and transportation. So we're looking at also a saving of $1 to $1.2 million on top of offering full day pre-K for our students for next school year. So we're very excited, and again, I want to thank our board for their vision and really charging us to make that happen, and also for our team members for really working hard to again make that happen. Moving on.
Okay, any comments on that at all?
Great way to start out.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, thank you for, I want to add is, some of you are familiar with the Lone Star governance, and you know our board and some of our cabinet members have been really working and really engaged in that great work of the Lone Star governance. Offering full day pre-K is aligned with goal 1. The first goal that our board adopted is to increase the percentage of our students who are reading on grade level. So I want to make sure that we are actually, what we're offering is really aligned to our board goals that were developed.
Thank you. Moving on to number 2, approval of endorsement for the TASB Board of Directors for Regional 1, Position A.
Mr. Chairman, and board members. So, every year, we have to nominate someone, and I think it's time for us to nominate, someone. So, I don't know if you wanna nominate it today, or you wanna, maybe, we still have time until, the due date is really August 29, but, I'm just sharing this information with you and asking if we wanna nominate someone today.
I think, I myself would rather wait till we have the full board here,
Okay.
and that way we have a consensus. And so, with that being the case, I'd rather just wait.
Okay.
So, no action there, so we're gonna go to number 3. Approval of board delegate and alternate for the 2018 Delegate Assembly.
So this is where our board, have an opportunity to appoint one delegate, and one alternate to serve, as our district representative. So, I know we have 2 board members who are out today. So we have until, September 29, so I don't know if our board,
We can wait on that one.
wait on one as well.
I would like to say I'm interested. I'll put myself out there.
Oh, I was gonna nominate you anyway.
That's good.
Yeah, I guess we can take a vote. On that one. I'd like to nominate Alicia Reina.
Second.
Okay, there's a nomination and a second by Dr. Mary. All in favor? Anybody opposed?
You opposed?
I am in favor, so motion carries. You are the delegate.
There you go.
Fantastic. I will represent
I-
our district with pride.
I don't know about the alternate. Do we have anybody that wants to be nominated for the alternate?
You can
No?
wait on the alternate if you want.
Okay, we'll wait on that one.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the delegate and we're waiting on the
Just put it
alternate.
in here.
So that's it.
On the superintendent report, thank you.
Okay, under open forum, do we have? Congratulations.
Thank you.
We don't have any.
None?
Nobody signed it.
Okay, there's nothing on open forum. Under consent agenda, we are pulling items number 9 and 10. So at this time, I need a motion to approve the rest of the items.
So moved.
A
Second.
motion by Mr. Avila, second by Dr. Mary. All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Favor, anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, item number 9, to approve the financial audit for fiscal year ending August 31st, 2017. Do we have our
Yes.
auditors and presenters in place?
Yes, sir. Mr. David Segovia is here representing the audit firm.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Segovia. I'm a partner with Colleagues and Ingram, and we conducted the audit of the 2016-2017 fiscal year. What I've done is I've put a report in each of y'all's places. I'm assuming that y'all are looking at it. What I'm gonna do is I also have it in PDF. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call it up here, and in case y'all want to follow with me. Let me see, I may have to, I may need a little help here, David. Let's see. Oh, okay.
I know.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I mean, you have 2 options. Obviously, you can go through the report, and if you see one line item, you can interject whenever you want. The other option is I'm gonna be flowing through the pages that I'm gonna be looking at. I already have an agenda that I'm gonna hit. If for whatever reason y'all wanna discuss something more in detail, just interject, and I'll try to elaborate as much as I can. Otherwise, then some of the staff might be able to help me on some areas that maybe I didn't delve in deep enough. I don't think I need the mic, but so I am gonna start with, if you go to page 148 on the report, please. 148 on the report. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start now. Typically, page 148 summarizes the entire report for any district or any entity. You will see that section 1 at the very top says summary of auditor's report results. So typically, when we come in and audit a school district, we look at two areas. We're looking at your regular financial statement side, and then since y'all receive a lot of federal funds, we look at the federal funds too. So we're required to make sure that you all have controls and are complying with those controls and complying with the processes of complying with the grant. Is it not loud enough? Okay. So this section of page 148 is broken out into two sections. You've got the financial statements portion, and then you got the federal award section. Okay. So we looked at both sections of the school district. So the first line item that we look at is we say, okay, so we're looking at the school district and we're trying to determine what kind of opinion we're gonna issue. Unmodified opinion is the highest opinion available. Now, I do wanna emphasize before I go forward that even though there were noted issues, and I'm gonna dive into those in a little bit, even though there were noted issues that definitely the school needs to improve on, what we look at is from a quantitative standpoint. So from a quantitative standpoint, we believe that the numbers are good. They're solid, and they're not going to move anymore. If there's some adjustments that need to be made, then we look at what we call materiality. So is a number large enough to sway the opinion unit, the general fund, or one other fund? So even though you may see us issuing an unmodified opinion, where you may stand back and say, well, we've had a number of issues with the forensic report and a number of other issues, right? How come we're getting the highest opinion? It's because we're looking at it from a quantitative standpoint. Different focus. So I want to make sure that you all understand that. Now, dumping into the next bullet point, you will see that we noted that there are issues still that need to be addressed on your books. I'm going to dive into those little points in detail, and then y'all can interject and ask me. Now, I do want to emphasize that the district is going through changes. I mean, y'all have been going through changes from 16 to 17 till now with the new superintendent. So I would presume that some of these items with your new CFO in place, I believe some of these things are going to be contained and they're going to be addressed. So keep in mind, we're looking back. I'm looking back on data to make this report, okay? So overall, you all have a material weakness in financial reporting, okay? What do I mean by that? Meaning that when the numbers were given to us, they needed work. We posted about 100 adjustments to get the books back in a condition to where we would say they're materially correct. That's with assistance of management and hitting the various areas that we looked at. So even though you have an unmodified opinion, there's still a lot of work to be done going forward, okay? On the federal awards, we looked at, obviously, every grant that you receive. In fact, if you want to get an idea of what we looked at, there at the bottom on page 148, you will notice that there are 4 grants that we looked at. Those are the main grants that we looked at to audit your school district. So we go through a mathematical computation and we say, hey, these are the ones that we need to look at and focus in and determine whether you are compliant with what the grant is telling you, and second, whether you have controls in place to make sure that there's no inconsistencies with the way things are being applied with the grant, okay? So this that we're looking at on the federal awards, I'm saying we looked at Title I, we looked at special education cluster, we looked at 21st Century Community Learning Center, and we looked at the school improvements grants. And in summary, we noted that you had a significant deficiency in procurement. So not a material, not the highest problematic area, but you have a significant deficiency. So we know that obviously you have a new purchasing agent. I say new because it's the first time I've met her, and I think she just got hired recently. So I know that the district is moving to make changes, but in the period that we audit, 16, 17, there's issues that needed to be addressed. And I'm gonna dive into that one in a little bit, okay?
So
And-
between material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, which one is the greater, the larger issue?
Yeah, material.
Material,
So
okay.
material means, material means that the likelihood of that error being caught
Is very low.
Is very low.
Right, okay.
Is very low. So, so we graded it as a significant deficiency on the procurement side, okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding this summary page? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is now dive into page 149 on your report. 149 covers the very first item that I had mentioned to you. So on the financial statement side, you know, when the books were given to the auditors to audit, what we're saying is there was a number of areas that needed to be addressed. So they got addressed. So it's important for us to convey to the board, to the district, that, hey, some improvement needs to be done. Now, keep in mind, we're looking back. At the time, y'all didn't have a CFO at the time. So now y'all have a CFO in place, so things should, in my opinion, move forward a lot better, okay? I'm gonna jump over to page 150. During the course of the audit, the district has funds with particular financial institutions. They're required to be collateralized, meaning the bank is supposed to take their own money and invest in another bank and basically put the money in the district's name. During the course of our review, we noted that there was a couple of points during the year where the bank didn't do that. So you were basically, if something were to happen catastrophic, then the district would have been in a situation where they would have lost funds, right? That's exactly what it means. Any questions on monitoring of securities pledged? Okay, so I'm gonna jump over to page 151. Excess expenditures over appropriations. What the state of Texas says is school districts must budget throughout the course of the year to make sure that that they are planning for future expenditures. And during the course of the year, before the year, you adopt the budget. During the course of the year, you adopt budget amendments. And what we're saying is, we were reviewing the general fund and the debt service fund, and we noticed areas there where the proper budgeting wasn't done. And I'm gonna dive into that page in a little bit. Right now, I just wanna go through the course of the points that we noted during the audit, right? Then we looked at compliance. So we looked at state compliance. And we noted that there was an expense made to purchase a notification system. I think y'all know it as Blackboard. And there may be possibly some wiggle room for the school district to make a case that it is allowable. But based on the Q&A that we saw on the state compliance, we don't see it happening. So TA could come in and say, hey, you know, don't do this again, or we want our funds back, or whatever. But at this point, with the information that we have on hand, it's not an allowable expense. Okay. Jumping over to page, let me see here, 153. Minute here. Okay, jumping to page 153. This item here was one of the items noted on your forensic report, meaning we were looking at allotments that are done by the state of Texas. And those allotments basically say, hey, you have to spend this money this way. If you have a teacher that's bilingual or what other, that's the person that needs to be in that classroom teaching that course. We noted that you had an issue in the gifted and talented and in the bilingual education program. So worst case scenario, the district, the state obviously can come in and look at that already. I think during the course of the audit, I had a young lady call me from the state, so I think they're already looking at that, or they've already looked at that, and they're not looking at that anymore. Any questions regarding that? Jumping over to page 154. On 154, again, we're looking at state compliance. We're looking at allotments that the state gives the school district. There's requirements there. The district should spend, if you look at page 154 and you look at the criteria, you will notice that there's some percentages amounts there. The district is required to spend certain percentages with certain allotments. Now, there's two school of thoughts there. There's been some information coming down the pipeline that TEA looks at a 3-year period to determine if in fact, hey, you know what, you were in compliance. But the data that's coming down to the auditors is you report it as you see it, and TEA will come in and make the final determination. So what we're doing is we're just complying with what we're seeing, and TEA can come in and say, hey, this is a non-issue. So I can tell you that for 16-17, you were not in compliance with certain parts of those allotments. But at the end of the day, TA can come in and say, hey, you know what, we want to see a 3-year average, and we want to see an allocation of certain cost, and you're okay. But they're the ones that have to say that. Our responsibility is just to report it. Jumping over to page 155. On page 155, this is covering the federal programs, or the federal grants part of the audit, okay? What we noted there is on the procurement side, there's some weaknesses there, and that's more focused on something called sole source. It seems like the district was either a lack of understanding or because of change in personnel. Sole source is very specific, and there's very few situations when you can use sole source designation. Now, in case I'm throwing some people off on the definition of sole source, all we're saying is that the school district is acquiring a product, and the school district is saying, hey, this is basically the only place I can get this. They're sole source. So TA has come out and said, hey, there's very few limited situations when you have sole source. So you have to be real careful. You can't just take the vendor's word and say, hey, I'm going to give you a purchaser's affidavit, or a vendor's affidavit, excuse me, that it is sole source. So we found this to be a significant deficiency. And I think steps that are being taken now to address those issues. Okay. Any questions thus far on what I've presented? Okay, I'm going to jump over to, let me get to that page. It's going to be the budget to actual. So if you jump over to page 70. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started with page 70. What this is we look at your general fund, and that's principally, I think, the fund that the board, the district uses to make decisions on how we're going to go forward on expenditures. So we look at, there's 4 columns there. If you can see, you'll see a column there for original budget. You'll see one for final. Then you see one for actual, and you see the variance, okay? So for the beginning of 16-17, you all adopted a budget, and I'm looking at, if you look at total revenues, you all adopted a budget of $162 million. You ended up making final budget amendments and you end up saying, okay, well, we're gonna receive about $165 million in funds for the 16-17 school year. If you look at the third column, which is actual, y'all came in, the actual results is y'all came in at 161 million. So, I mean, you want to get that actual and final, you want to get those as closely aligned as possible. As closely aligned as possible. That basically, this is, the way we see it is when we look at the fact that the variance or the gap is very small, then we say there was a lot of basic prudent decisions going on throughout the course of the year. If we see that number be very large, then we say, okay, what's going on? Why weren't they planning diligently during the course of the year? So you're going to have some variances. What you want to do is you want to minimize them. If you dive into the expenditure section, basically your largest expenditure is going to be your teachers, your labor force. So what you want to focus on this actual report is you want to focus on the variance between budget and actual, right? So you want to look at the last column. What you want to make sure is that there's no negatives there. If you notice, there's one negative on there, and that's going to be 1347. I don't know if y'all can see that. That's like midway through the page. Again, I'm looking at the fourth column. I'm looking at this item here. I'm circling it with my mouse. So what you want to do is you want to keep those numbers positive. You don't want to be negative. If you're negative, then we have to disclose that as a finding. Okay. So for the course of the year, y'all had about 150. I'm looking at the third column. Y'all had $155 million in expenditures, and you all had budgeted $165 million. Okay. So y'all ended up, frankly, ahead by $6,242,000. And going down further some more, you will notice that y'all had some transfers out of $3,703,000 to the internal service fund. Now, I will indicate that it is critical that y'all get a handle on the internal service fund. And I know during the course of the year, we had various meetings with management regarding that. And that's, it's probably going to take some discussions with an advisor.
If I, just to clarify, the internal service fund is the health insurance fund.
Yeah, health insurance fund. So typically, the definition of an internal service fund is, they should kind of have charge, kind of support itself, right? Charge, have the actual charges for the users. But this one is telling me that y'all had a deficit, so y'all have a lot of expenditures on that end.
Yeah.
How much?
$3,703,000. Overall, you still came out ahead. You had a $2.5 million increase to fund balance. We made some adjustments during the course of the year. You will notice that there's a line item called prior period adjustments. Again, I'm looking at the third column. It says $693,000. We had to adjust your books down. So obviously that's not a good thing. But we had to make an adjustment to the general fund because of the first issue that I brought up regarding the status of your books. They needed some work. So we made an adjustment for $693,000, which decreased your fund balance. Any questions on the general fund? None. Okay, so I'm going to focus on one more page, and then I'll jump on to something else. So go to page 23. There's only one line item that I want you to look on page 23. So on the very first column, you will see that it says general fund. So on the general fund, what I focus on when I'm looking at a report, I look at the unassigned fund balance. Y'all have about $47 million that basically it's, you know, to do whatever the district sees fit regarding operations. So that money is not necessarily restricted, not restricted for a particular purpose. This is completely just unassigned. 47 million represents about 112 days of operation. So the standard really in industry is about 3 months. So you guys just are above 3 months of operations, which is a good thing. So you want to continue staying there in the 3 months or more, not less. Once you get into less than 3 months, then it becomes an issue. I'm done with the financial reporting side of the report. There's another section that I want to get into. This is critical. It's going to be on page 41. So if you look at your report, if you look at the binder, go to the tab there's a tab there that says required communications. And go to page 41. So let me go ahead and open it here as well. So what I want to communicate here, these are the areas that we, in other words, for simplicity, you want to use this as a roadmap. You want to use this as a roadmap going forward to address areas of the school district. So if you look at page 41, these are the areas. You will notice there's a legend there at the very top. The legend says improvement point, control deficiency, significant deficiency, and material weakness. Okay, that's the legend. So that legend is going to be that rating. Once you get to the blue part of the legend, if you will notice how we're rating that. So there's I start with number 8 here. So if you notice where it says control number, it says the first 4 digits are the year, and the last 3 would be the number of item that we're talking about. This is item number 8. So in essence, there are continue to stay on page 41. I just want to address how many. I have 22 points that we think the district should focus on going forward. I think it would be prudent. Some of these things, again, you will review them and you will say, well, we already took care of that. Again, we're looking back, right? We're looking back. We're not talking about it now. 16, 17, we're looking back. So the first item there, I'm going to just briefly go through them real quick. So the first thing there is anytime you have a change in key personnel, you want to make sure that any documents that are being generated internally or any contacts you have with institutions, that those are updated immediately. Again, this is key management personnel. So if you have anybody that was key management and they're listed at a bank as the main contact, well, you want to call the bank and say, hey, we don't have that person in administration at this point. Change it to a new person. So what are we saying here? All we're saying is district, board, look at your key positions when there's changes and take a proactive approach in making sure that you update things that need to be updated. The other thing that we noticed there is when your purchasing director was changed, some of the documentation that was still being printed out of the system was reflecting the old purchasing agent. So those kind of things, they need to be updated immediately. So key positions, update processes internally, okay? Accounts payable, this is the second point, point number 9. Accounts payable, the district has a process in which accounts or invoices are paid. It seems like the process needs a little revamping in the sense that some invoices are being stamped as paid when they're not paid yet. Now, it may be a timing difference. Maybe they'll get paid the next day, but I would prefer that to be prudent, right, that they don't get reflected as paid, okay? Accounts payable detail, when we were looking at the general ledger and a subsidiary, those numbers weren't jiving. So what we're saying there is, hey, on a monthly basis, go in there and look at your books, make sure that your subsidiary ties. Don't do it at the end of the year. Fixed assets, I'm on page number 42 now. On fixed assets, this was a significant part of well, significant amount of time was spent on trying to clear this thing, get this thing addressed. You all went from one software to another software, and in that transition period, you all didn't transfer, and again, I'm saying you all, I'm saying the district didn't reconcile the data when it went over. It went over and it wasn't reconciled. So it created a significant amount of difference that the district, at the end, was trying to reconcile. So my only point is, significant time was already invested in reconciling that thing, so keep it going forward, okay? Keep it going forward. Let me see, there we go. I think my mouse got stuck, so I'm gonna just keep on going with number, I'll tell you what page to get to. Okay, go to page 43. Once I cover an item, and if I notice that the other items are related to the same item, I will not cover it again, unless you all want me to. We looked at human resources in terms of the processes. In other words, the district has a process in place, procedures. And you say, hey, I'm gonna have all these files, documents per employee and so on. Either that process needs to be looked at again, or your processes need to be revamped. Some of your files are not according to what your procedures are. So what are we saying? Look at that, spend some time to change that. I know that you just hired an assistant, I think, superintendent of human resources, so they're probably changing those things as we speak, right? Again, we're looking back, so going forward, those things probably are being addressed now. I want to jump to page 44. On the very last point there, information and technology.
I'm
On
sorry,
that,
can you go back one?
yeah, not a
On
problem.
the one we were just on, when you said there was one instance where an employee file was not made available for review, what does that mean?
Well, that means that after several attempts to gain a file, we just moved on because we just couldn't get it. Does that make sense?
No documentation on a particular employee?
Correct. We couldn't get that employee file, so we just moved on.
So you couldn't get it, is there a reason how we can improve this? It's like,
Well, we met with by the way, I do want to inform you all that we were meeting with Dr. Leo and her team during the course of every week during the course of the audit. So they're aware of the issues that we were coming across regarding employee files. I mean, from my take, I don't think it was deliberate. It might have been that there was a miscommunication, but Dr. Leo, Sandra, and Ms. Cancino can tell you in more detail as to the issues regarding human resources. Again, I don't think it was deliberate. I think it's just the file. The only thing I'm going to say that the file never got this. No. Is there anything else you want me to add to that?
No, that's fine. This all sounds familiar, like
So you're
Yeah.
saying the file probably did not exist?
we're moving on from this.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we just,
He's saying that there were exact words, it was not made available. for
yeah, not
review.
made available.
No, that's fine. It was a clarifying question.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so on page 44, we talked about procurement, so I'm not going to talk about procurement. On information and technology, on that, I will emphasize that it appears, based on some of the areas that we were looking at, that obviously as the school district grows, you will have migration of employees from one department to another department and so on. It looks like the user access rights of employees aren't being revisited. Now, again, I'm looking back. It may be that there's a plan in place now and they're being looked at, but A perfect example would be if somebody is in, I mean, we'll just say, is in human resources, for example, and they jump over to payroll. Well, human resources can do certain things that payroll shouldn't be able to do. So if that person goes over from human resources to payroll and they have the same user access, then that creates a problem. That's a control issue. So a plan needs to be in place so those things can be viewed and re-examined to figure out who has certain controls over certain areas. Okay? Let's see. I'm going to jump to page 46. If you look at item number 21, which is going to be the middle item, that is, it kind of goes back to procurement. The only thing I want to emphasize on procurement is anytime you're dealing with federal funds, you want to make sure that that vendors are not, you know, they're not suspended or debarred. So in the process of us looking at that area, it seemed like that process wasn't being done. Now, it could be that the person at the time that the purchase was being done, they looked at it on screen and they said, hey, they're good, but you need to develop an audit trail for the auditors to see that you're doing that, right? So I can't go back and see that you did that unless there's something printed in the file that I can see. So that's critical. And the reason I say that is because that involves federal funds. Everything is critical, but this one is really critical. Anytime you're dealing with federal funds, you got to be real careful on that issue. That concludes my presentation. There's some format issues that we couldn't kink out during the printing, so tomorrow you'll have the actual final report. I know that Sandy has to get it out to Moody's at one point or another, so somebody's gonna go around and pick up the reports and you'll get a final one tomorrow. Just, if you notice, when you're flipping through it, there's some blank pages. It shouldn't be like that. It should flow all the way through. So that's just our inability to produce a report timely. Any questions?
Sir, how many other districts do you do these type of audits on?
Okay, so let me give you a history of now we're Car Rigs and Ingram, but before we were Long Chilton. And Long Chilton has been around since like 1949. So I'm gonna venture to say, I've been with the firm since 99, but we've probably audited every school district in the valley. I don't know, Linda can attest to that. So we've audited basically every school district in the valley.
Okay, and as you were speaking, you tend to soften your the blow as far as how I'm interpreting what you're telling how our district looks, sounds, and is. Sounds pretty bad. I mean, it's nothing that we're not already aware of.
Sure.
But it's continuing. Internal controls.
Yeah.
Something that our new superintendent has his hands full. We can't continue to be progressing like this if we want to be an innovative district. We've got to stop what we're doing. And sir, you're going to have to really look at all these departments in technology and HR and procurement, warehouse. These are all problems that we've kind of mentioned to you before that we're having, and it's obviously continuing, and I don't want to be part of this. We've got to find a way to improve.
Well, what he noted was it may not be continuing because this is the report of 2016 to 17. So this might not be reflective of the current state, but it is reflective of the current state, 2016 to 2017.
Correct, but you know good and well we're still having these internal situations.
Yes, but I don't know if the current situation is exactly how they reported it in this report. That's all I'm highlighting.
But nevertheless, I think you bring in a good point, Mr. Film, and I agree with you, Ms. Reyna, too. What we're charged to do is really to assess where we have this information is from the 2016-2017 school year, but nevertheless we will have to assess where we're at and see if there's some of this I guess practices that are still happening, And if so, what kind of systems and mechanism, how can we put a stop to this, and how can we create a tighter systems and structure? So I do understand the charge, and I think the team here in the Senate is very well, and we'll be looking at all this and then bringing some more details and information about where we stand, and if we're gonna be developing some systems, we'll be sharing them also with you.
And if I may add, a vast majority of either the comments or the findings have been addressed already and are being addressed. I know procurement is the one that we're looking at very closely. Just changing our processes. We're hoping to be able to centralize our purchasing department, and that'll streamline the process. We are also reviewing the communication that we have with our information technology as far as access rights and who can do what in our system. So all that is being looked at. I think those are the major ones that I identified from here, which is purchasing and the information technology that he alluded to. So I am in agreement with that.
And I have a
yes, ma'am.
question in regards to that, where you're having tighter control, and how do we, is there a way to check up, like he says, to check on that's being implemented? Like
Yes.
checks and balances, like, okay.
There is, as far as the information technology, I know that there are reports that we can run by user and gives us a listing of the user rights or what
Okay.
modules in the system they're able to use.
Okay. And who would be monitoring that?
That is actually falls under human resources.
Okay.
I believe is Mr. Joe Pettis in charge of the ProLogic software.
Okay. So that it won't, I mean, we won't find out a year later that, oh, this wasn't checked on and this
No.
wasn't checked on. Okay.
No, ma'am, we are currently reviewing, and I mentioned, Sandy's been working very hard, and a lot of these have been addressed already. We're not waiting, we did not wait till this was final. Like he mentioned, we've been in constant communication, and as the issues have been brought up, we have been addressing them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you had a question or a comment? Well, I did.
No, because I know that the follow-up audit next year, usually, you end up reporting the findings for the prior year to see if they've been addressed.
Sure.
So they will come back.
We don't want to wait another year but
No,
yes.
no, they have to report on it.
Yes, they have to.
report.
We will.
Yeah, it's a process that's in place.
So just to elaborate on that, on all these findings that we had towards the end of the report, we're required to ask management to tell us, hey, what are you gonna do to fix this, right?
Yeah.
So they'll give us a general statement and maybe very specific, but the new auditor will come in and say, okay, let me see that you did it, right?
Correct.
So,
Right.
keep in mind, I really wanna emphasize this is like a roadmap that we gave you there at the end, a lot of points, to fix, things. I would say, make sure that those things get implemented.
And thank you. And you know, the conversation already started. I know there was one of the big issue, and it is a big issue to any school district, is really looking at the federal money and how they're spending the federal money. And the teachers are the certification, not only the certification, but also are they teaching so in other words, if a teacher, we use bilingual Title III money, so they have to be working with our lab students. Are they actually doing that full time? Are they doing it half time? Or what it is? So we need to be in compliance, and we need to use our money according to the funding, right? The sources. So that conversation already started, and we already started looking at our bilingual. We'll be looking at our special ed and all that stuff. But I know the conversation, as I said, and the work has already started. Just to let you know.
Yes, and to address one of the points on the state programs and the allotments, we are allotted a certain amount to spend by program, and there is a direct cost that we have to meet, be it as 52% or 55 or a 58. But TA will look at a 3-year average in order to send out communication when you're not compliant. The auditors do look at it year by year, but for TA purposes, they look at a 3-year average for that. So we may not be. I think there is one program that we are not compliant on a 3-year average, but the rest we are compliant on.
Can we ask which program that is?
The Korean technology,
CTE.
Okay.
yes.
Any other questions for me? Otherwise, I've concluded my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. back to number 9. Need a motion to approve the financial audit for fiscal year ending August 31st, 2017.
So move.
It's a motion by Mr. Avila,
Second.
second by Ms. Reyna. All in favor?
Favor.
Favor. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 10. Approve to award the audit firm RFQ 030818-315 for fiscal year 2017 to 2018 through 2020 and 2021.
We requested proposals for our upcoming audit for fiscal year 17-18, and we received 3 proposals, and you see there the tabulation. You have the 3 firms that submitted proposals. The committee is recommending Mr. Raul Hernandez and Company for an annual fee of $40,000. The clarification that I'd like to make from the agenda to the item that we have listed here is that we are proposing a 1-year contract with the possibility of extending for 2 additional years. Have any
Okay, so-
questions?
The recommendation is?
Your recommendation is who again?
It's for Mr. Raul Hernandez and Company.
Where are they from?
He's from out of town. He's from Alice. We received
Alice.
3, yes, sir. I'm sorry, he's from the Corpus Christi area, the Region 2 area. We received 3 proposals. If you look on the 3rd page, the tabulation, we received one from BML, Burton Macomber and Longoria, Mr. Luis C. Orozco, and Mr. Raul Hernandez and Company. We brought all 3 for interviews, and we asked the same questions to from each firm, and we awarded points individually depending on their answers, and we tabulated, and these are the points that were awarded. You have there the point value for each one. BML Burton Macomber is a firm out of McAllen, which is, it's a large firm. However, they don't have any school district experience. We did ask that question. They do not do school districts. We would be the first ones. Mr. Luis C. Orozco was the district's previous auditor, and Mr. Raul Hernandez is from the Corpus Christi area. I know he does audit school districts. I know recently he did the Rio Grande audit, and other smaller school districts also.
How soon do we have to make a decision on this?
It would be, I would recommend it, sir, because it would give us time to start working some of the preliminary work. He could start looking at our federal funds and getting some of that field work out of the way.
Do you have a concern?
Yeah, I do have a concern. I have a concern that where the individual's from, just like the auditor that we had here was also out of town. The ones from McAllen is a big audit, and they do schools. Okay, so.
When we asked, they said they did not do schools. They had engaged with,
They actually have somebody out of
right.
Houston or Dallas that does have the experience with school
Yeah,
districts. But locally, they don't.
But she wouldn't be coming on to the district to do any field work. She works as a consultant for them.
So your concern is that they're from out of town?
They're out of town, and it's something that like, the ones we had here were supposed to be a big firm, they were, supposed to be real good, and also they were from out of town, and it took forever for them to finish something up. I don't wanna go through the same process, trying to get a hold of some, they're not gonna come through. That's my opinion, okay? I personally like to, put this item, just table the item till all the board members show up, and maybe we can all decide on what. And I'd like to look at this a little bit closer myself. That's just my opinion.
Ma'am, have you done work with Raul Hernandez?
Yes, sir, I have. He was the auditor in Alice ISD.
So is that the reason they come on into, were you the one that brought them in?
No, sir. We put the proposal out, and whoever wanted to was able to submit. I did reach out to other auditors that I work with, and to let them know that there was a proposal out, because we were not getting a lot of proposals in. We only got these 3 responses in.
Has this Atlanta does any work down here in the valley?
I know he did the Rio Grande City audit, and I believe Santa Maria and.
Santa Maria de los Towns, La Villa, Montreal.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to make the motion that we table this item.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Avila to table the item. Do I have a second?
I'd like to get the opinion from.
Okay, I'm gonna weigh in on this, and I'm gonna say, look, we've been behind on every one of these, audits every year. Every year since I can remember. We never have them ready in January. We hardly ever, we're rushing to get it for February the 28th. If this is the recommendation that, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Cavazos, Ms. Cancino, Mr. Marines, and Ms. Noriega are making, I don't see why we wait and prolong it. And then we're gonna be pushing back again another 3 weeks, another month?
Mhm.
I don't want to be waiting. I want these people here, whoever it is. So, basically, that's where we're at. So
So the motion's on the floor and we're waiting for a second.
we're waiting for the table, right? That's the motion that's there. So there's no second. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
So motion to approve by Dr. Mary,
A second.
second by Ms. Reina. All in favor?
In favor.
Favor?
I oppose.
Motion carries. All right, we're done with that. That concludes consent agenda. Academic services. To approve out-of-state travel for ELA strategists.
That's part of the consent agenda.
It's already done.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're done.
Executive.
So we're going to executive already?
Yep.
Before we go to executive, at this time, I'd like to thank Dr. Leo for having the courage to come in here and help us try to get this district back on the right track. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done, all the time that you've spent here, and all the energy and wisdom that you brought to help us get to where we're at now. And I don't know how long we'll be in executive, but I do want to thank you. And I think that I pass the torch to whoever here on the board wants to chime in. Thank you.
If I may, I would also like to express my appreciation to the board for giving me the opportunity to serve in this way. As a lifelong educator and one who is committed to bettering the quality of life for everybody, being in this district and being a part of this team gave me a great sense of accomplishment as well. So thank you for that opportunity and the experience. And the fact that I have made so many more new friends is what I take away as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Leo.
Okay, moving on to executive session as authorized by Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, .072, .073, .074, .075, .076, .082, .083, and .084. Time is 7:03. Headed to executive. On the
Yes. Just, oh, like that, ooh. Too much information. Family.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, time is 8:10, and we're back in open session to take possible action on matters discussed in executive session. Discussion and possible action to approve superintendent's recommendation of personnel.
I move.
Second.
There's a motion by Dr. Mary, second by Mr. Avila. All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Anybody opposed? Favor? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding possible resolution of the Jacqueline Padilla versus Donna ISD.
So move.
And second?
There's a motion to approve and by Mr. Avila and a second by Ms. Reina. All in favor?
Favor.
In favor.
Favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding the resolution of Cordova versus Donna ISD. For the record, I will be needing to abstain from that one.
I move we approve.
It's a motion by Ms. Reina,
I second it.
second by Mr. Billman. All in favor?
Favor.
Favor.
Okay, motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding district personnel.
We did, no?
No action.
No action on that?
No action?
Oh,
And then discussion and possible action to approve pending or contemplated litigation, settlement matters and all that good stuff?
No action.
No
No
action? All right. Need a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Avila,
second.
second by Dr. Mary. All in favor?
In favor?
Favor.
Favor? Meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming out.
First board meeting? 6:30?